am live. I'm reading the Awakening letters. I started it a few days ago. I have already part one. I read part one, which was called Awakenings. These are letters. Which Lady Sandys transmits. Her and Rosamond Lehman's daughters passed away very young and in tragic circumstances. And these letters come through the pen of Cynthia. And they have worked on this for a long time, her and Rosamond. The Awakening Letters is a selection received through her mental mediumship over the last 30 years. This was published in 1979. Quite a lot of letters are from her brother, who is Sir Alry Gascoigne, also called Joe. A variety of letters they received from people in the afterlife. In part two we had the tycoon, the Isle of Man disaster, and we are now at a letter which Patricia sent. I already read the first one, and this is another one from Patricia, I believe. And she transmits to her mother. Ma, can I go on about Aesculapius and the healing? My woman patient was obviously getting rather excited. She confided to me that she had been terrified of coming. She'd been told that she would be left all alone in a black tunnel. But this is so different, and everyone is so kind. The priestess told me that she had been trained in hygiea in the early days of healing and had come back twice in subsequent lives to continue the work. The great hygiea I also saw in the etheric. Her power to heal was quite simply love. She had taught my priestess how to throw out the encircling wave of love power. Now, this is not easy with difficult characters, she confided to me. With children it is so easy, and they respond so quickly. But with the irritable and the disgruntled, it is sometimes very hard. No one has to be quite impersonal. Now, to go back to our patient. She was sleeping on a pallet bed, very soft and comfortable. Bread, fruit and milk was brought to her when she woke. She looked at them sourly and asked for something I didn't understand, but the priestess shook her head, adding, "Not during treatment, only the simplest food, massage, rest, sunshine, music and the theatre." "Oh, but I couldn't walk there, the pain would come back again." "Just try a few steps and see." So she did. The theatre was close. We got her a seat and she came out in fits of laughter. The treatment continued. Sleep, massage, rest in the sunshine, drinking and bathing in the lustral water, music, colour and fun. "This is a real holiday for me," she observed one day, when I had begun to think of her as cured. But the priestess said, no, if we sent her away now, she'd fall back into the old ways of thinking. Now she must break completely with the past and go through the tunnel of fear into the light of knowledge. It was all explained to her quietly that one night, and she would choose her own time. She would meet the hypnotic priest who would put her into a receptive state, not trance, and lead her to the mouth of the tunnel, where the whispering water would accompany her. And voices from the darkness would at intervals repeat the all-powerful mantras of health, which in her receptive state would sink into her aura and bring complete conviction that health was the normal, natural condition, and that all other conditions had been entirely erased from her consciousness She was rather nervous about this treatment, so no one hurried her. She lived happily in the atmosphere of healing and rest, until one day when she began to feel she must get into touch with her family and go back to ordinary life. Gathering herself together, she went to the priest, passed through the tunnel, alone, and at night, and came back to us, tremendously bucked at having achieved this last test. She left us in a blaze of excitement, with the conviction that she'd been completely cured. Next one, some extracts from letters from Sally upon a variety of subjects. Words of power. This is a new line for me altogether. In the beginning, God created words of power, and they were used down the ages in varying degrees. The Egyptians used them, the Greeks, the Chinese, the Indians, but they lost the knowledge of the power of words as they became separated from divinity. When this happened, words fell back into being just words. I was made aware of words soon after I came here. I heard a circle reciting a votive prayer, and then I realized the meaning of church services, i.e., when we all say the Lord's Prayer together. I saw the atmosphere round this circle glow, and then become threaded with light, and as I watched, I heard the mantram they were reciting repeated again and again, like an oratorio. I never before understood the meaning of repetition, especially when this is sung, not said. One day, the power in the spoken or the sung word will return, and D is one of the group detailed to help carry this out. I asked him if I could join the group. He looked at me and said, "Sing." Though D has only been over a short time, he is already united to at least a part of his greater self, and this part spoke through him and told me I could do it. But you must go out and practice with the knowledge that every sound you make is reacting somewhere upon someone. I tried to think high notes and low notes, and then he said, "Speak, don't sing, and let me see your voice record." I couldn't think of what to say, so I fell back on poetry and recited Rupert Brooke. I think it was Grantchester. He stopped me and said, "Well done, you've seen the poem. I could live it with you. That is exactly what I mean. Take any poem or song that gives you a picture and see that picture with all the strength and emotion of your personal imagery, and then you will bring life back into words." The second time I tried, I not only said it all in my mind, but it was laid out plainly in front of my vision, like a TV film in color. I said, "Can I make others see this? Only if you can infuse their minds and they're capable of drawing in from your vibes. From your vibs," it says here. But this is just the beginning. So now I am launched upon quite a new venture. And the word become life and lived among us. Is that right? Next one. Church workers and the pre-Christian ray. Don't cast out the churches. They too are changing. I went into one and found it crammed with living entities from our plane. I said, "What are you doing here?" And they said, "We are a body of old church workers." "Oh, we were a dull lot," one woman told me. But we had this vague feeling for something undefined that drew us to this church and others. And now, to our astonishment, we found on coming over that there were two rays, just as magnets. One was very ancient and pre-Christian, but so powerful that I couldn't even stand up in my ether body. Consumed and absorbed by it, and used for entering into the auras of others near. I asked what this ray was, and I was told it was the first ray of creation, and into this was absorbed those lesser rays formulated by all the early creeds of sun and serpent worshippers. I was horrified and said, "Oh, but I couldn't touch any pre-Christian ray," whereupon I was laughed at and shown that they were the stronger forerunners of the Christ ray. They were the John the Baptist on a vast scale. I felt a little better, but still rather bruised in my mind, until they allowed me to feel the full force of the Christ ray, and then the bruises were healed, and I became, oh, so radiant, and had almost lost the dullness of my old personality. And I kept on laughing at the fact that we all, rather staid, narrow church people, had to go through this baptism of pre-Christian rays before the Christ ray was permitted to touch us. Now it seemed so natural, but then I could hear the moans of those suffering, so they said, from the idolaters. And now we see and are deeply grateful for all those stumbling steps humanity had to take before this wonderful Christ era came into being. Thank you for letting me say all this. You have no idea what a funny, frosty little party they must have been. They showed me their old selves on the Akashic records, and at the same time we both explored these wonderful first Christian rays. I've never penetrated as far back in time, and oh, the fire and strength and absorption of these rays that created the dinosaurs and all the fossilized fish and plants that we knew, and set in motion life on the material plane. The sheep. I've always loved animals, as you know, but never really had time to consider them very carefully. Now your mother, Cynthia, has opened my eyes to the other lines of evolution, which they all take. It is so fascinating. I've been trying out the feelings of cows and rabbits, and then we took young things such as lambs and foals, but they were too instinctive. So we turned to the old men and women of their race. The sheep were extraordinarily wise, particularly the mountain sheep in Wales. I thought it would be fun to go to places I knew and see how the sheep felt there. They have a weather sense that mocks our weathermen into fits. They can foretell a whole season. Just think of your long-range forecasts, always wrong. But the dear old you, whose sense body became mine for a space, told me that election day was going to be fine and dewy. Dew is important, she said, in every sense. The dew released a lovely freshness into the air, and this in turn affected mankind and sheepkind. I followed her life among her lambs, and her feelings when they were parted. These were far more philosophical than ours. She knew that her lambs would be killed, and that she would be in the end, and that until then she must bear and bear and bear more and more lambs. I asked her if this was not a very sad future to look forward to, and she said, "No, I love the pastures, and I love the lambs, and when they die, they go on." She didn't define that, but obviously any thought of death as finality had never occurred to her. Then I went on to a mare and foal. The mare was relaxed and happy and entirely centered on the foal, and thought my intrusion an awful bore. She wanted to go on having constant love scenes with her foal, who was too excited at being born to be coherent. Above all, these two pasture-loving creatures got an immensity from the grass. It was life beauty, comfort, eternity, and a constant flow of pleasure to them on quite another plane. Animals are conscious of a soul. Do you realize this? Immortality is so completely a part of their divine being, yes, divine being, as to be unnecessary for them to comment on. They know they will go on. I wish you could realize the delightful calm wisdom of my old you. I felt you must have been in a stable long ago and welcomed the baby Jesus. This letter is Sally's first report on a friend for many years, a distinguished historical biographer. Throughout her adult life, she had stubbornly refused to consider the possibility of survival of physical death, and to the end set her sights upon recovery from a long and painful illness, RL, an intellectual friend's awakening. Now I must tell you about H. Well, she has not accepted any change at all. I saw her when she woke and said how glad I was that she had joined me. From the sound of my voice she thought I was you. Then she asked for her pen and papers, which of course I gave her, but the substance has changed and she felt the difference and grumbled that I hadn't found the right pen. These are all flabby. I can't write with these pens. What are you doing? I took the pen and wrote quite easily, but her mind was completely orientated to the material. Then she suddenly said, "What's that noise? It can't be birds, can it?" "Yes," I replied. "They are all around you." "Oh, not in my room, I hope. But I rather like hearing them. Ross, dear, can you get me some food? I'm so hungry." "What would you like, darling?" "Oh, anything, just a few snacks." So I tried to reflect the last type of goodies you had brought her. She looked at them rather disdainfully and said, "You've been very quick. Is there a new shop near here?" I tried to explain that shops were not necessary on our plane, but she merely thought I'd gone bonkers and passed it off with a smile. "Are you feeling better?" I asked. Yes, I suppose so. I am. I do wish I could get out of this house soon into the fresh air." "Well, why not?" I asked. "Come with me. I take you into the garden." "What garden?" was her quick retort. She is quite alert. So at last I just told her that I was Sally, not Ross, and that she had left her poor sick body and joined us on this plane of health and perfection. Perfection? There's no perfection anywhere. Just a mass of half-truths and semi-perfections. I said, "Not here." "But where is here? What are you talking about? I'm in my old room. What's the matter with you? I must be delirious." Eventually, after a lot of crosstalk, I persuaded her to come with me into the garden, and she kept on saying, "This surely isn't Hyde Park, or Hurlingham, or any of the old squatters." "No," I told her, "you are in the outer courts of heaven." There was a long pause, and then her only remark before finally falling asleep was, "But where is your mother? I can't go on without her." So that's the end of part 2. Part 3 is the Glastonbury scripts, which I shall read another time. Today is the 16th of April 26.